Okay, framework computer. I have installed Linux. This is the framework 12, which is the touch screen. You can see that it reacts to touch, which is kind of nice. Not my favorite reaction, but yeah. So I'm going to ink a little bit, and then I'm going to test it out on the Wacom Movink, which is a Wacom product that you can get. And I'll tell you that I drew a little bit remotely. It was pretty frustrating. The two-finger tap is kind of cool on kind of the undoing, and so some of that. The rotation, it's the part of the problem with what we're looking at here is that this is desktop software. It's not built to really be touch responsive. It is touch responsive, but like it's not made for that. So when it comes to that type of thing, it's just janky, just feels a little bit laggy when we're kind of dealing with that type of stuff. I'm using Krita, and it's fine, it's fine. But I will say I did notice a fairly significant difference that I didn't think I would. The Stylus for the framework, it's about $60. It's fine, It is battery operated, USB-C chargeable, which is not my favorite. I don't like battery operated styluses. And so you can see I've got the Wacom here. I've got another stylus for a Cintiq here. Unfortunately, they don't do anything, right? I mean, obviously it's because this isn't a Wacom product. But as I looked up the stats, I was like, why does this feel so different? This has roughly 4,000 steps or points of pressure sensitivity, and the Wacom is 8,000. And so you wouldn't think with 4,000 that you would notice a significant difference, but like twice as much pressure sensitivity, there's a lot of nuance to that line that you really do notice. I'm gonna ink part of this with this, and then I'm gonna jump over and see how it would be using a Wacom on this. Now, I've previously tested this, and I can tell you the really nice thing about Ubuntu Linux on the framework is that Wacom is plug and play. And so I didn't have to install anything. I plugged it in and it just worked, and it worked just great. It worked just like my Mac. And I actually really liked it. I was a little bit disappointed as I was kind of going through this, but I really liked it. So it took me a little bit of time to figure out like which pen I like. The Ink 4 pen rough isn't bad. The Ink 3G pen, is okay. It's a little bit on the thin side for what I like. I like a little bit more of that kind of pressure sensitivity variation, but you can see like there's pretty good variation in pressure. That's fine. So, and you can come over here on Krita and you can go to assign to tag and you can add it to your favorites. They've got different brushes, and each of these is going to do a slightly different thing. You'll notice with less pressure sensitivity that it's throwing down, different lines. So yeah, it's fine. And I did notice one of the things that really stood out as I was doing this, like I'm just way more familiar with Photoshop and Fresco. And so what I do like about Krita is you can map it to the existing kind of Photoshop layout and stuff with the keystrokes and everything. You can kind of open this, right? Which is nice. So it just kind of folds. Let's see if I can do that on screen. So you can normal laptop orientation, and then you can fold it all the way around, right? And once you get past flat, the keyboard obviously becomes inactive because it's just on the back, right? So it's just sitting on your lap, your knee, or whatever. The number of times that I wanted to push a hotkey was pretty high, right? And so I'm drawing a lot on desktop, or at least on my laptop hooked up to a Cintiq. So I've got a keyboard off to the side and that type of stuff. So that was a little bit frustrating because, like, again, this is desktop software. It's not built for mobile. It's built so that people have access to keyboard. So I'm just gonna start inking this a little bit, and we'll kind of see how it goes. And I've got to get back to a brush that I want. And let's make sure I'm on a new layer here. Okay, and so Like it's fine, right? But like the palm, that happens so often. Like it does not, I can't figure it out on any of the forums. Like I can't get any of that palm recognition. It just jumped over to a different thing, right? And so super frustrating with that. I feel like Wacom, you've got a button on the side that will turn that off. iPad seems to have that kind of like dialed in. So I didn't have this with me, and let's try this, right? So these little gloves, they're supposed to reduce or eliminate that kind of palm recognition, and it looks like it's working. So anyway, that was frustrating. Let's jump back to the Ink 3G pen. Okay, and yeah. But now I can't double tap because one of my fingers, the finger that I would normally do that with, is gone. So now you got to kind of like awkwardly do that. So anyway, the palm recognition thing is pretty frustrating. I'm going to try to come in. Just, I don't know, that lack of pressure sensitivity, it just jumps to those bigger things, like way more than kind of the nuanced situations that you get with the Wacom. And I mean, you know, if you don't care or if you don't mind the smoothing, that's fine. But I hate computer smoothing. I really don't like it. One thing I will say about Krita that I really like is jumping back and forth from the pen to the eraser with the same tool so that I don't have to switch to eraser. That's super nice. And then you can just jump back. If you have it in keyboard mode, you can just do that by toggling with E. But as you can see, this is fine, right? It has locked up on me a little bit. Seems to be a little bit of a, what would you call it? Like a file size issue. I work really big on these Photoshop files because I want to be able to like blow this up and go to print, and I don't want those types of issues. That just, where it jumps so big, like that lack of pressure sensitivity is just eating me alive here. But when I first loaded this Photoshop file, which I did with KDE Connect, and so you can airdrop things. So let me show you that. So I can go like this, and I've got this app, KDE Connect, and you can load that, jump on here, and it's got send files, send photos and videos, and push local clipboard. I used the remote input, which turns your phone into like a mouse and keyboard that remotely accesses your Linux computer, and it screwed everything up. It jammed my cursor down to the lower right-hand corner of the screen. It was very frustrating. I had to uninstall everything and restart the computer multiple times to try to get just my mouse to work again. And then it didn't. So don't touch that button. That button is bad news bears. But what I was able to do is I'm able to, from an iPhone, airdrop, for lack of a better term, files to my Linux, because I was planning on using you can't see them here unless I open this up, but they have these little slots, right? And so these are these little inputs that could be USB-A, USB-C, Ethernet, or whatever. One of these is a 250 gigabyte hard drive, which I was like, oh, that's great. Like, I'll just kind of use that as a thumb drive. And so I thought that would be cool. The problem that I had is that Linux formats drives in a format that is unreadable unless you go through something like Samba or something, and then it's not a drive, it's a networked drive. So anyway, so I couldn't pop this into my PC or into my Mac and like just put a file on it because it was an unreadable drive. So that was a little bit of a downside to that, but ultimately it worked out fine, right? It was good. I just don't like the nuance that I'm getting out of these lines. It's really frustrating. I'm gonna switch over to that other pen. So, you know, and I don't know. I've been using Wacom now for 20 something years. And so it's hard for me to say definitively, if I don't like any of that, and that's something I'm going to show you in a minute. Everything I just did and undid would be so much better in the Wacom. Just on the lighter side of the touch, this just doesn't register as well. Like it kind of ghosts on some lines, which is kind of frustrating. But generally speaking, what I was going to say is if you are not used to Wacom, I think that this would be fine, right? I don't think you'd really notice, and I think you'd get used to it, and it'd be just fine, right? It's definitely passable. It's good when it comes to most of what you're doing. There's a little bit of nuance lost, which for me is fairly significant that I hate. But generally speaking, it works. It's fine, right? It's what it is. I'm getting pretty straight diagonal lines. That's my biggest complaint with battery operated styluses. Styli? I don't know what the plural for stylus is. But normally on an iPad, you do this diagonal line and you get a little bit of a sine wave, a little bit of a wiggle that isn't in what you're doing. And that drives me nuts because I want the wiggle that I have in my hands to be what goes down. I don't want the computer to add it. And I hate computer smoothing for the same reason as like, if I want a smooth line, I'm going to draw a smooth line. If I want a curved line or a wiggly line or whatever, I'm going to draw that. I want to be, as Nick Miller says, I am the decider for when my line sucks or when it's wiggly or whatever. There's a little lack of nuance. Like when I scribble, I feel like there's a touch of lag. Not my favorite. Okay. I drove a Harley for a while. And prior to that, for about a decade, I drove a Honda. And I used to say all the time, like, oh, people who drive Harley Davidson, you're just paying an extra 10 grand for the logo on your bike or whatever. And then I got a really good deal on a Dyna Superglide, a Harley. And I came to realize what that extra was. There's just a level of nuance and control that you could feel in every aspect of the bike. Honda VTX 1800, decent bike. I love it, right? It was great. I had a lot of fun with it. I hate the scribble of this. Sorry. Keep interrupting myself to complain about that, but it's driving me nuts. I really don't like it. So then I went and I'm going to put this off to the side here and switch to the Movink being run through, and I'm gonna pop this open so I have the benefit of the keyboard. So back to the story. I got a deal on a Dyna Superglide, and it was just amazing. Everything about it was incredible. Like as I was doing this, I was like, oh, I get it now, right? I think that might be a similar experience if you haven't really gotten used to double the pressure sensitivity that comes with the Wacoms, and they have really gone out of their way recently to do a lot more affordable things. I think Huion and XP Pen were kind of eating their lunch for a little while there, and now they're much more affordable. So switching to the Movink here, I've got now I can use the keystrokes on the keyboard, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to try some of those things that I was doing before. Just, oh man, I wish you guys could see this. I know it's a little bit too small, but like the nuance of what's going on in that line is so much more. I can get it thinner. I have better control. It responds. I'm not ghosting any lines. Like on the lighter side of this, it is just significantly better. So you'll have to take that into account if you're looking to go this direction. I do think maybe it's a little early to get the 12, the Framework 12. Given where the digitizer is at the moment. I love this so much more. It just feels like every line that I'm putting down is the exact line that I'm getting. There's no real lag, and I'm not under compensating for half of the pressure sensitivity that you get with a Framework 12 stylus. This is just a lot better. I feel like it's smoother and smoother and more responsive. So anyway, all of that's to say, personal preference, right? And if you don't think, if you're just starting out, or if you don't think that you will miss that level of pressure sensitivity, or if it's cost prohibitive to go with Wacom or something like that, I think the Framework 12 is great. But what I'm noticing here is, oh, and that's one thing. Once you switch, you saw me just double tap or just tap with 2 fingers. That doesn't work anymore. I gotta go back to Command Z, because this doesn't have it, because I turned off, because you can hit this button and you've got the, the like, do you want touch on or off? And I always have that off because I just don't like the stray lines. It's just not worth it. But if I do turn this on, so I'm gonna turn on touch just to give you an idea here, right? Same type of kind of like lag, because like, this isn't built to kind of do that, but it's fine. It's not my favorite. You notice, like, as I let go, it was still trying to like process. So the touch features, and I don't think this is Framework or Linux's fault. I think it's just desktop software isn't built for like touch. It's just not. So anyway, that is to say that I'm going to fill in some of this here, like so, and then we'll jump over to the eraser. Let's give ourselves some highlights here, kind of along those edges. Come back here like this, shade some of this. This is a little bit of a close-up. I don't normally ink every little mouth phalange of this character, but I also don't normally have big giant close-ups of this character either, so we're going to kind of just do a little bit of both, and we'll come in and just kind of fill some of this in. So generally speaking, as you can see, maybe you can see it, but I'm so much faster on the Wacom because I feel like I'm not fighting the pen. It just is doing what I want it to do. I think Krita is awesome, with the exception of those few times that it's kind of frozen. I had my 4-year-old on here kind of testing it out. If you ever want to test something, like, give it to a 4-year-old. And she locked it up, man, so many times. An adult, right? When you're doing something and you press a button and you don't get a response, like, if you've been using a computer for a while, like, just wait, right? Don't press that button 47 more times, because it's just, you're experiencing a little bit of lag. And if you just wait, then it'll come back. But if you don't wait, it's logging every single one of those key presses that you do, except it's, all 47 of them are going to show up eventually. So I did lock up Krita a few times in different ways. And yeah, it was annoying. So other than that, though, I think Krita's pretty great. It's free. And as was pointed out to me in an earlier video, free does not mean that you don't have to pay for anything. In fact, you should, right? Once I get a feel for kind of where I'm settling on software, I am going to go in and donate to some of these open source projects. Definitely already going to do that with Ubuntu project, because Ubuntu is freaking rad and way better than Windows 11 spyware that comes just installed that way. So if you've got the means, which, if you're paying for something, then you should be able to pay that. Drop some cash towards those projects, because they are awesome and they can use the funding. So I forgot who mentioned that to me in the comments of the last video, but appreciate that reminder. It was a good point. So I think that panel's done, except for the eye here. So I can finish this, but basically what we're looking at is, I think it's great. I think, generally speaking, it works really well. And as I'm kind of going in and playing with the different tools and everything, I think you could easily switch over, definitely on the illustration side. So all I've tested so far is really inks. I do foresee a little bit of a challenge when it comes to colors, mainly because I have some very specific brushes that I'm using in this comic, and I'm wondering how that will translate over as I'm kind of coloring things. Like I've been able to get like good kind of texture by, you know, the brushes that I've got. And I don't know. I know certain programs like Procreate and things on the iPad will take, there's a little known secret, or maybe well-known secret, that they'll take Photoshop ABR files. And it seems to work just fine. Kyle Webster just jumped over from Adobe over to the Procreate team, and he seems to be liking it over there. So anyway, I do think, let's see, don't I black this? I think I want to black most of this out. So let's just have kind of that blacked out there. So on the next video, I'll jump in and try to color this, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, inking. Krita's inking engine is great. The tools that they've got are nice. I don't have the same custom brushes that I have, and I haven't researched yet to see if I can import those types of custom brushes or anything along those lines. But I mean, the ones they've got, they work well, and I like them a lot on the Wacom, and they are passable on the digitizer of the Framework 12. So ultimately, okay, that's a different keystroke than Photoshop. I guess holding Alt doesn't zoom out. Do I just have to press Control minus, I guess? Okay. Anyway. All right, yeah, so that's it so far. Yeah, the framework, oh yeah, we'll put this back in frame so we can look at it while I talk about it. The framework has been great. I've loved it. I think I might be kind of regretting not getting the Framework 13, because the touchscreen of the 12 for somebody who's been using Wacom for 2 decades falls a little short. It's fine. You know, the touch sensitivity as a tablet when you fold it is fine, and I don't mind it. I like a lot about this computer. I will also say that I've had my 15-year-old using this. She has not run into any problems doing any of her homework assignments, which nowadays most school stuff is kind of web-based anyway. So because I'm running Firefox on this, it seems to work just fine. And so that's been great. She has been watching movies on various streaming platforms as well, which seems to work just okay as well. The email works, everything. So like, I do think for the average user that isn't like a power user, I don't even know why you don't go to Linux. I mean, if you're used to Mac, Ubuntu is very similar, and the tools are great, and you can download apps, and it pretty much does everything that you would need to do, except run specific software that runs on PC or Mac, like Adobe and stuff like that. But there's a lot of open source stuff that kind of works. So I would say if you are a general computer user that just goes in and does email and word processing and those types of things, that this is perfect. I think you could do it. Save yourself a couple $100 and avoid supporting monopolies that are doing stuff that you might not like, that I definitely don't like, and go with Linux, and that'd be great. I recommend Ubuntu. I think it's awesome. Framework, so far, very impressed. I love the business model. I love the idea of getting rid of e-waste. I love the idea that they are doing the opposite of planned obsolescence, and that everything in this is replaceable. And including, they mentioned that even the Stylus has a battery inside of this that is replaceable. The tip is replaceable. And so you can crack this thing open and replace the battery on this if it ever wears out, and those types of things. So yeah, overall, I love it. I think it's going really well. And my biggest takeaway is on the digitizer of this. It's fine, but this has got half the pressure sensitivity and it's battery operated. So my preference is the Wacom, which you can plug right in. So get something like a Movink, drop that onto a framework, get a Cintiq, drop that onto a framework, plugs right in, it's plug and play, and you're good to go. So that's the update so far. And you saw me working on my comic, Rage of Enlightenment. If you liked this video or you were interested in this series to see how this creativity experiment is unfolding as I try to get rid of my reliance on monopolies that hate us and move over to open source projects and companies that are actively doing things to help the environment by not creating more waste and things like that. I'm going to framework and I'm going to Linux, and so far so good. To be honest, it's very few problems other than the KDE Connect time where it took over my mouse and shoved it in the right-hand bottom corner that I couldn't get out of it. Other than that, it's really straightforward. And the instructions that you've got on the framework site that kind of take you through and show you how to install Linux and do that type of stuff, really straightforward. So very impressed so far. Limiting factors on using software that's designed for desktops so that you have access to a keyboard without a keyboard. That's annoying, but that's not framework or Linux. That's just, that type of situation. And then the less pressure sensitivity. So read my comic at coreykerr.com/comic. Leave a comment on the video. Tell me what you think. And yeah, if you're getting into this and you're looking for an early recommendation before I can fully test out all this stuff, I think I'd recommend the framework 13 instead of the framework 12 because I'm not getting as much benefit out of the touchscreen as I would like. But that's if you already have like a Movink or a Cintiq or something like that you can plug in. If you're doing this instead of an iPad or something like that, the 12 is fine. It's not a Harley Davidson, but it definitely is a Honda. So yeah. All right, guys. We'll catch you later.